Welcome to Influence, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of influencer marketing and the creator economy with the people who know it best, the agents, creators, and marketers who operate behind the scenes. This podcast is hosted by Powder, where streamers can search their best moments to find short, shareable stream clips with AI. And I'm your host, Alyssa Goldberg. Today, we're excited to welcome Justin Sachs, CEO of Nexus, a trailblazer at the intersection of gaming and influencer marketing. He and his co-founders launched Nexus in 2020 and have since been developing tools to facilitate easier, more sustainable, and more trackable collaborations between game publishers and content creators. And it's a special episode because we'll be going deep on creator programs, how they work, what a good one looks like, and what room there is to improve on the current models. We're thrilled to have you with us today. Welcome, Justin.
Hello, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I wanted to start things off by asking a little bit about your career, about your philosophy that underpins Nexus. I know you transitioned from being a competitive gamer to a content creator, to running BD, to founding several companies, and now kind of pioneering creator program software at Nexus. Can you walk us through how your early experiences have informed the way that you approach things at Nexus?
Yeah, I'll kind of speed through the beginning parts. So you mentioned I started as a competitive gamer. There's now a whole industry called esports, but that did not exist at the time. And then I was a content creator myself, but this is also like nascent YouTube and pre-Twitch and all that sort of stuff. But probably the most informative was when I was at a gaming media company called Curse. I joined them in 2013. They were eventually acquired by Twitch in 2016. And along the way, I did a bunch of different roles, but one of them was leading business development and supporting our sales team. And so as any media company, our main form of monetization was advertising. So we would work with people that wanted to reach our audience and they would advertise to our audience. And most of the time that was through banner ads that would go on websites and all sorts of stuff. But I kept trying to convince them. I was like, hey, the way I learn about games, the way my peers learn about games isn't really through banner ads, but a lot of it is from our favorite content creators. So the personalities that we follow on Twitch and on YouTube and the communities that we're a part of. And let's work with those people to create content for your game. And, not only were they totally disinterested in that, even when I tried to add it as like bonus added value to the campaigns that we would run, they're like, no, just give me more ads. And fast forward to today, influencer marketing is the largest part of most games marketing budgets. It's the fastest growing. It is like basically today, if you don't have a creator strategy as you launch a game, you're going to be dead in the water on launch. And so the world has really changed, but that was really like the big learning and decision for me is I believed that would be the future, that these creators that everyone loved and watched were the way that people learned about games, got excited about games, purchased games, and then stayed engaged with them. And it was going to be all about, well, how can a publisher connect with the right creators? How can they incentivize them? How can they have a long-term working relationship? And so that led me eventually to build Nexus and what we're doing today.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense because I feel like it's always hard to get marketers and advertisers, even though they know before anyone else that the new technology is coming, that they have to justify allocation of budget. And so when you have like a very clear performer, like a banner ad, you know exactly how much it costs to acquire a user. But then when you have a kind of like new, not untested, but a channel where you can't measure with as much precision, it gets really difficult to justify to your boss and your boss's boss why you should be spending money there instead of on the banner ads. And it sounds silly now, but I remember even back in like 2013, there was a whole discussion around, in even like e-commerce and stuff like that on marketing and advertising on traditional channels, like in print media, on radio, and people allocating it towards social media was so taboo. I used to work at eMarketer, and part of the reason our market research existed was so that those marketers could like say, okay, I promise there are people using these platforms and you need to start spending money on Facebook. It's almost laughable in retrospect, but like there's always like a 10-year lag.
Yeah, especially when things get like further muddled when, the game publisher is using an agency and that agency might use a handful of agencies to do specific channel buying. And then like
Totally.
each one is just like one person trying not to get fired. So they're just going to do the stuff that worked last time. And so it takes time and, people that are willing to take on some risk to eventually bring in the new channels. But yeah, looking backwards, it sounds ridiculous. Like clearly, content creators and social media are the way to reach people, not radio and banner ads.
Yeah, exactly. Also, just to back up for a sec, I saw a critter run across your desk. Who who is that?
That is Cassie. Here, I'll wake her up. She likes to
Yeah.
sleep on a corner of my desk, and so she can come say hi.
Hi,
And
Cassie.
she's a fluffy, large cat, and she just
It's a very cute cat. Yeah, I just like saw her tail kind of flash across.
yeah, she likes to get involved in most of the meetings I do. So yeah,
She's part of the action, as she should be. But I wanted to ask also, in kind of like a silly question. So Cassie had not Cassie, director of partnerships at Nexus Cassie, mentioned that you have won a couple of like high profile tournaments recently, at least in like the B2B gaming world, at GDC, and then also at in World of Warcraft at an OTK tournament. One, if you had to choose one gaming character that you feel like embodies you, that telegraphs your spirit, what character is that and from what game?
interesting. Okay, well, the one that most comes to mind is Thrall, which is a character in Warcraft, and then specifically in World of Warcraft. He's like the chieftain of the Horde, and so he leads like an entire big group of people. But like really, the thing that I identify with Thrall is that he's also a shaman, which is the class that I play in World of Warcraft, and
Whoa.
specifically, he's a shaman in the truest sense, where like there's three different types of shaman. There's elemental, which shoot out lightning bolts; enhancement, which like hits people with axes; and then restoration, which heals people. And Thrall kind of does all three of those. And I like to, really immerse myself in all parts of that class. And so I think the character I would identify with would be Thrall.
Dang. That's a really good answer. And also it kind of makes sense as like the co-founder and CEO of a company. One would hope that you were like the charismatic leader that is doing both like the visionary leading, but also the like healing of the troops on the
He
back
has a
end.
pretty tragic story, so let's hope I don't fully follow in his footsteps. But yeah.
That's true. When you were first starting Nexus, what were some of the initial hurdles that you guys faced? I mean, I think one thing that, at least in game tech, is really tough is like, as we were saying, like no one really wants to be the first, but once someone sees that there is a first, the crowd rushes in. So how did you guys navigate that at first, and what were your initial methods of overcoming that resistance?
Yeah, well, we're still working on that for sure. But
Aren't we all?
yeah, I feel like gaming is almost uniquely nuanced in that it is very build over partner. Like game developers very much want to build all of their own systems, even if those systems are duplicated across every game. And so like it took a long time for there to be engines that game developers would just use, which are like the main two ones are Unreal and Unity. But forever they would just make their own engine, which is like a huge undertaking. Much less like these like smaller systems around things like matchmaking or item entitlement or whatever it might be. And so when Nexus, we go in and we say, hey, we bring in this platform, like this way to work with creators at scale and do all these different things inside of the game that have nothing to do with actually making a game. It still is challenging because a lot of the developers hear that and they're like, oh, we could build that ourselves. And it's like, yeah, totally. There's not like some proprietary algorithm.
Like, obviously you could, but should you? Maybe the answer is no. Yeah.
Right. And so like that is still a thing that we fight. And like what we've found is that by building very real, authentic, organic relationships with studio heads, with the people that lead these games, and then we show them what we've been able to do and then what we've seen happen in the industry, then they're like, okay, this is a system our game should have. And then by building that relationship, because most folks will be like, yes, we could build it, and certainly you can. But then actually doing it is like, well, it'll take years and it'll take millions of dollars and it's going to be, a big, interruption of the roadmap. And so most folks don't actually go and build it themselves. And so like by building that relationship, they're like, okay, let's work with you to do it. And so having some of those really important initial partners has been really helpful to us.
Yeah, I would imagine. And yeah, it's true. Gaming is a very relationship driven business. Even more so than like other media sectors that I've been exposed to. I think that is also why, I mean, among the reasons why creators are so effective in gaming. Compare like when you integrate them early on in the process of game development, and they give feedback and they help with community development and engagement and all that kind of stuff, compared to other sectors as well. Um, so one of the things that Nexus does really well, one of the things that you guys talk about doing, is kind of providing a turnkey way to do a creator program. What is a creator program? Like, what does that mean? What does a good one look like? What is like kind of a mistaken as a creator program, but like doesn't quite make the cut?
It's a great question, and there's certainly not an accepted like canonical definition of a creator program. The way that we think a creator program is, and we're pretty biased of being like, no, this is actually what it is it's a long-term, evergreen, aligned incentive way for a game publisher to work with content creators. It's a way so that those content creators are incentivized to drive value to you as the game publisher, and you as the game publisher are incentivized to drive value to those content creators. And so to talk about like the features of what makes up a creator program, the one that we think about is holistic, meaning it's the onboarding. So how does a creator know that your program exists? How do they join it and become a part of it? It's critical like dashboarding, so that there is that feedback loop for the creator to know that they've driven value, so that the publisher has a dashboard so that they can see that the creators are driving value. And then there's also like all of the accounting and finance piece of like, if revenue share, which we believe is a core part of what creator programs should have, if revenue share is part of your program, well, how do you actually send payments to those creators? If there's dozens, hundreds, or thousands of these like individual independent contractors, how are you going to send all these payments to them every single month? How are you going to do taxes at the end of the year? So we think like those are the big pieces that make up a creator program. One of the ones that is not a Nexus one, but I think is really best in class, is Supercell. They've built really great creator program with their community for games like Brawl Stars and Clash Royale. And some of what people talk about a creator program that I think is like not quite there is when it's just like a little private Discord server where you put in a few devs, and then there's a bunch of creators, and then every once in a while the creators ask a question and the dev answers. It's like, that to me is like less than table stakes. Like that should absolutely be there.
Like
that
you should be doing that no matter what,
Right.
on no matter what budget.
Right. But that is not a holistic creator program. That's not a way to like empower the creators to make a living making content for your game, which is, in my opinion, the KPI pretty much every live service game should most care about, is how many unique individual people can make a living where their job is to make content about and for your game. And the bigger that number is, the better your game's going to do. And in order to have that happen, you need to have all of these different systems in place to align those incentives for both sides.
Yeah, and to kind of dig in further, what is a content creator to you?
It's a great question.
Because I feel like your definition is probably broader than my definition. So
yeah, I use the word creator and influencer pretty interchangeably. I tend to almost always just use creator. And the reason for that is creators don't like being called influencers, which I think is pretty fair. Like influencer has somewhat negative connotation around like
totally
like doing something someone doesn't want you to do. But I think of a creator really with anyone with an audience. So this could be a YouTuber, a Twitch streamer, a TikToker, could be someone with a podcast or a Discord server, or just a really large friend group that whatever you play, all of your friends are going to play.
Yep.
That's kind of what I think of it. Not necessarily that they're actually creating content, but more around that audience that they have.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, I feel like the definition is expanding so much when you get kind of like UGC games themselves. And as you were mentioning, like the more that a game can be a self-sustaining ecosystem where people can build things from it, earn from it in a lot of different capacities, whether it's like building mods or like making skins or like making content around it. Those are all completely viable ways to like develop the ecosystem. It's like, you know, all of the specialties of earning money in the real world are almost like mapped onto the virtual world that way.
Yeah, I have a lot of like personal ties to that because like I got my start. I was making mods in games and things like that. But
Yeah.
one of our partners just launched a really amazing system. So one of our partners is Ninja Kiwi. They have a game called Bloons Tower Defense 6, which is an amazing strategy game, mobile and PC. But they launched a player creator system and then this thing called accolades. So like players can make maps in the game. And then when other players
Mm,
play those, they can give them an accolade, which costs like money in order to buy. And then
cool.
for the map creator, for the player creator, when they receive an accolade, they now get revenue share from that, which is like, even if it's just someone who, it's additional like gas money or like lunch money, like what an
Yeah,
awesome thing of like, you love this game and you're trying to make cool things inside of it and now you get paid for it. Like that's a pretty great system.
totally. It's allowance money. It's like energy drink money, you know? It's
Yeah.
a I like that. And what do you I mean, I feel like in gaming as well, like there are a lot of different kinds of publishers and a lot of different kinds of games that get released, some of which are like really high budget and some of which are scrappier. What does a creator program for like a brand new indie that's a team of 5 people or less look like? And then what does a creator program for, I mean, a Supercell is a great example. I mean, they have playbooks, they have tiers, they have a lot of different like bells and whistles to the creator program. But like, what what are the features that like an amazing one that like super well capitalized, like big team has versus like a we should do this, but help version has.
So yeah, it's a great question. I think like one of the first things is the way that Nexus envisions a creator program is that it's a performance only program, meaning like
Yep.
creators only get paid and the platform only gets paid if like real dollars are being driven, if sales are being driven, if value is being driven for the publisher. But there isn't the amorphous and vague like awareness marketing and brand marketing point to it,
Mm-hmm.
which means like whether you have a ton of budget or no budget, you can have a performance only creator program, especially like, like if you're going to build it yourself, that's expensive. You're going to need a team of devs. It's going to take a long time, et cetera, et cetera. Like Nexus, like we don't charge implementation fees or like SaaS fees. We are fully aligned. Like, are we actually driving value and sales for you? And then we get a
Mm-hmm.
cut of those sales. But I think the layer that you can add if you do have a ton of budget is the human piece, which is really more around like account management and community management. Like the more people that you can have directly connecting with your creators and coming up with activations and ways to like have the creators participate in marketing beats and communicate with them around best practices, the better the program will be. The more like animators you have in game that can create custom creator SKUs and skins, like the better they're going to respond to that. All of those things help a ton. But if you have no resources at all, you can certainly still have a creator program. You can still have a way for creators to join a private community to drive value that is on a performance only basis. And like you can have all of those pieces. But if you have a ton of budget, you can do some special things around like education and activation and then like in-game, exclusive rewards and all that sort of stuff.
Totally. And like when you're saying performance, what what metrics or KPIs are the most relevant in your experience when you're running a creator program? Like what do you recommend for publishers to monitor? Is it literally like just revenue derived from each individual creator? Are there other metrics that you are tracking that you find are good proxies for that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So uh, most of the time when people think about the concept of a creator program, they think of the value that it drives from a marketing perspective of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, if we pay or work with these content creators, they're going to make more content and that'll be more, marketing and awareness for the game, which leads to like user acquisition. Turns out like, yes, a creator program does do those things. It creates more content and does bring in some new players. But like where we've seen the metrics that are most impacted is actually on the growth side. So these are things like converting a free player into a paying player or retaining a player significantly longer, reactivating churned users, or moving a player along the monetization curve, or even just simply having like when a player participates in a creator program, they become a more active player. They play more sessions. Like we've seen
Mm.
that be the biggest impact of a creator program. And like that's been the most surprising thing, frankly, in building this out is like the impact a creator program can have on like the downstream player behavior is pretty significant, which is why like, if I'm I'm way more comfortable going to a game that's been out for 6 years and has some organic creator community, and I'm like, look, day one, day zero, we're going to provide a ton of value to you, versus a game that's just launching. Well, it all depends. Like, are creators authentically and organically excited about the game? Because if not, the creator program isn't really going to solve that, because it's performance based and it's not taking a big budget and like paying people, hey, here's $10,000, make a video about the game. No, it's like, hey, if your audience likes this and buys stuff, you're rewarded for doing that, which it only works if the creator actually likes the game.
Totally. And when people say no to you guys, like, why are they saying no? Like, what are the hurdles to adoption here?
So I'd say there are three things. One of them is the one that we talked about, is sometimes people are like, well, we could just build this ourselves. And then usually
Yep.
I just wait like 6 months and I'm like, hey, how is the development going? And they're like, well, we haven't even gotten close to starting yet. And so then we restart the conversation.
Yep.
The second one would be like, most publishers know what I mentioned earlier, that like creator strategy matters. And so like thinking about the relationship with creators matter, but they don't necessarily know the importance of having this like really official holistic creator program. And so it seems like a nice to have, not a need to have. And so a lot of folks will say yes, then getting on the roadmap can be challenging. But probably the number one thing that is the pushback and the objection that we get is the fear of cannibalization of,
Right.
hey, if I'm sharing revenue for a sale with this influencer, what if that sale would have happened anyways? Like, then why am I'm just losing margin in that case? And so a lot of the education we have to do as a company is that almost like so much of what a creator program drives is incremental, is sales that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Even as simple as retention, as like a player that uses a creator code retains twice as long as the average player. And so like their LTV is going to be twice as high, assuming that they're not also buying more and playing more, which is also true as well. And so that's really like the big pushback we get, is the fear of cannibalization. And I'm not the sort of like salesperson to like promise and guarantee. It's like, look, here's the data that we have. And also within the first month or two, you'll see your own data of, what percentage of players using a creator code had never bought anything before. And now they're purchasing because of that content creator.
Totally. And do you get any pushback from agents at all?
So that is an interesting thing of the relationship.
It's an interesting dynamic, you know?
Yes. I believe pretty strongly all of the agencies should love these sort of organic creator programs, because it is the only way they can actually show the performance of their content creators that they represent, is like, look at the actual sales that they're driving. Otherwise, it's all like, hey, we got to this, we were the number 7 game on Twitch, or like, hey, we had these many viewers, but like, did that actually translate into people playing the game and then into those players buying anything, or doing any of the actions that the game publisher really cares about? So I say the agencies should love us, and sometimes they do. So there are a handful of agencies and management groups that we work really closely with that are like really close partners. But when you think, and like, this is where I have a pretty
they're just not incentivized to do it. They're not.
Most of the time, the agents aren't. The managers are, because
Right.
they get a percentage of all revenue that the creator brings in.
I see.
It depends on the agent. If the agent does a deal where they get a percentage of the creator code, they love this, because it's like a really powerful part of the income stream that the creator has. But if they only get a percentage for like brand deals that they bring in, they're actually disincentivized, because, and this is why like I actually am not the biggest proponent of like typical influencer marketing. I actually think it works against the game, because like, if you think about it, if the first interaction you have with a content creator is, hey, here's $20,000 to stream our game for 2 hours, and they do that, the creator is then disincentivized from playing the game again until they get paid again. And so like, it creates the backwards incentive in my perspective. And so some agents that are only paid on like brand deals and those sort of things, they would hesitate to want a creator program for their creators.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can charge a lump sum and not guarantee performance, I mean,
yes, if you can obfuscate, like, if you're actually delivering any value and keep taking money, in my opinion, that's a kind of a short-term way to think about it. But that is,
absolutely.
Agents, they also move agencies a lot, and so why should they work on a long-term deal when maybe they'll be gone in 3 months? This is why I recommend publishers, when you can, try to work directly with creators or work with management groups.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like I mean, the market for content creators around gaming like is highly fragmented, in that when people are super super small, they are trying to grow and they don't have any revenue coming in, and they want to get their first deals. Then you have like, just around like 1,000 to 10,000 followers, maybe something like this. Um, and those people are like prime examples of someone who could benefit from a creator program like the one you're describing, where they have really tight bonds with their community. They're highly trusted. They're like non-corrupted yet. And they are probably not represented yet. And then after the 10K mark, then like, the editors come in, the agents come in, like lots of mediation of their content. But I think sometimes when people consider creator programs like the ones you're describing, and they think about, selling skins or branded merch or something like that, they kind of assume that you have to be ninja size. But actually, the audience bond starts a lot earlier. And I'm wondering if you guys see, like, when you see which creators are most successful from like a performance perspective on your dashboards, like, what is the profile of those creators?
Yeah, that's all 100% right. The most important thing is that the creator actually likes the game, that like they authentically feel that the game is a good fit
Yeah.
for them, because the audience can see that, and they're not going to
Mm,
participate in the program and support a creator and buy something if they don't think the creator actually gives a shit about the game, because the player then
yeah,
probably, like the viewer probably won't like the game either. And so that is true kind of regardless of creator size, but it also tends to be true the largest creators are more variety creators, and rather than like the type of content, the type of games that they cover, what's really important is the reason that their audience watches them. And so if the audience watches them for entertainment, like they would watch that person regardless of what game they're playing or regardless of what they're doing,
totally.
they tend to not perform as well for these sort of programs. But if you watch a creator for education or excellence, like they're particularly good at something, or they have a really
Mm,
important viewpoint that you align with, like they're going to be really powerful in a creator program.
totally.
And we do see that more often in like the mid tail creators that have built both the authentic love for a specific game, and people watch them because they're like really good at it or they have a specific viewpoint about it, like they perform incredibly well.
Right, because it's like at the point when they're recommending something that has to do with their particular perspective, you trust and believe them, and then you also trust and believe that they have vetted other competitors and that they would only be recommending this particular item because it's something that they would like and use themselves.
Yeah, we've seen like the one of the more surprising things to someone that isn't as familiar with like the creator space is just the fact, like in by the way, in almost all of our creator programs, at the base foundation level, there's no incentive for the player. So like they're not getting a discount, they're not getting
Mm,
additional content, they're
right.
not getting exclusive content. All they're doing is in the same purchase for the same product, they're supporting a creator. And so like there's
Yep.
often like for us it seems really obvious. Like people do want to support their favorite creators, but a lot of the times people, other folks that aren't in the space are like, well, why would a player use the code then? Why would they add friction to the purchase? And it's because like they desperately really want to support their favorite content creators, and so like building that real connection between the creator and the player is like a thing that really matters for this.
Totally. Well, it's like if when you go to see, I mean, if when you go to see a live band or something, and I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of merch being sold at Taylor Swift's concerts, but also when there are smaller bands who have like smaller devoted followings and like smaller venues, getting a t-shirt, getting a sticker, getting a dad hat is like a huge flex,
Yeah.
right? It shows that you're supporting this group. It's also like that you are really up on the niche that you're focusing on. And I feel like it's very much the same with wow, why am I blanking? Not music artists, but I just had like a total brain fart there. But um, yeah, I feel like it's not so obvious to people why they would open their wallets to just like support another person. But oh, podcasts. Like whenever podcasts give you the code at the end for their sponsors. So like podcast ads in general are extremely effective for conversion, especially ones that are read natively by the host typically. And that's because people have a parasocial relationship with the host. They recognize the voice. It makes them feel at ease. It reminds them of a friend or a family member or something like that. And using the code on a website, slash this podcast name, they know that they're supporting their favorite podcaster, and like that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen just simply adding, so like in a game when you use a creator code to buy something, just adding a little toast notification of like, hey, thanks, your purchase supported creator name. Like that is like so impactful for the player. Like that little
Wow.
thing gets the player to play the game longer.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it reminds me of how in like e-commerce businesses that are just starting out, like
Yeah, yeah,
handwriting notes in the package is actually a really effective tool for retention and organic sharing. Like lots of people take photos of them, upload them to Instagram, or like, oh, love you too.
yeah, yeah.
And it really it lets someone know that there's a human being at the other end, that their money is going to a good place. And especially, I think gamers in particular really care a lot about where their money goes, what kinds of businesses they're supporting, what kinds of art and technology they're funding. And so it makes sense that means a lot.
Yeah.
From where you sit at Nexus, I'm curious to hear your perspective on some trends that are happening in both like influencer markets or creator markets and gaming. What trends are you seeing right now? And in particular, how are you seeing the dynamic between creators and their audiences change, and how creators are monetizing their content?
One of the things, like very broadly, and then I'll drill down into gaming, that I'm seeing that I love is creators building businesses around themselves or products
Mm,
around themselves. Like, the two most famous are like Mr. Beast and his candy bars, and then Prime with the Paul brothers, or one of the
yep.
Pauls. But in gaming, what we're seeing that I am really excited about, and there was a launch yesterday actually, is creators as publishers. So creators doing
Yeah.
in-game publishing. I think the beautiful marriage to me is when you can bring in incredible developer, the right content creator who loves that particular game or genre that is really known for it, and then some interesting IP. Like, to me, that's like an unstoppable combination. And so we're starting to
Totally.
see that yesterday. OTK, which is a big Twitch creator group, they own an indie publisher called Mad Mushroom, and they launched a game called Rumble Club, and it's like
Mm,
really cool to see all of the OTK creators all playing it and getting their audience involved. And then that's a big thing that I want to follow, is like, what happens from there. And I think some of them will work and some of them, might not work as well. And it'll depend on, how active are the creators actually in distribution? And then
yeah.
also, how active are the creators in development? And like helping the developers
Mm.
to think about, well, not only how should a game be designed, but how should a game be designed to be watched? And I think it's going to be a really interesting trend over the next few years.
Totally. Like, does this game have the right moments so that when I bring it to my audience, they can latch onto it really quickly? Are they just the shepherds for the go to market, or are they
Right.
really deeply connected to the process where they're like, oh, guys, we were choosing between these two colorways and actually we
Yeah.
went with this one?
Yeah.
It's a different kind of experience.
The specific example in Rumble Club, which is like Fall Guys or Stumble Guys crossed with like Super
Mm,
Smash Brothers, is that they've built like all of these systems most games would never build around like party management and like game invite management, so that it's really easy for the content creator, the streamer or YouTuber, to like bring in 29 of their people from their audience to play in a
oh,
30
wow.
person battle royale. Like, the system to do it that they've built is so clean and so impressive, but probably was a ton of work that most developers would never build unless they were
Totally.
certain that these creators would be really involved in the distribution part.
So, what do you think that other companies or brands can learn from that? Is it like go out and find a creator to bring on board
Yes.
early? Okay, literally, it's that.
So,
Okay.
there, so there's like a bunch of pieces to this, and then going back to the agencies, one thing that we've seen develop over it's probably been almost like 3.5 years, is getting creators almost as like game consultants, and so bringing in
Mm,
creators fully into the life cycle of a game, from like the earliest stages of like building out that vertical slice, and then having the creators involved in like the really initial closed alpha and beta testing, And then with those relationships you've built and with the understanding you've built from those creators, when you're out in like the first sort of like promotion of the game, those creators are a big part of that beat. And then obviously for launch and then post launch, and then getting the creators' feedback on the live service element, I think we're now seeing that creators can be part of the entire life cycle of a game. And I think
Yep.
that's really great to see. And that is, frankly, that's what I'd recommend. That's a lot of work and it's really hard to do.
Yep.
But when it's done well, like we've seen incredible success from it.
And do you think that that will change when more creators start doing it? Like, I don't know, if I'm thinking about the beauty industry, right? You know, Kylie did really well with her lip kit, and then like Fenty Beauty came out, and then like Selena Gomez has Rare Beauty, and then
Yeah.
Hailey Bieber has Rhode. But like, not everyone can have a competing lip gloss. You know, like there's a finite number of lip glosses one can have.
Yeah. But yes. Well, I think two things are true. I think one of the best things the internet has provided is like the most like narrow niche your interests are, you can find where you belong in your community.
Absolutely.
And that's where like I think Reddit has done a great. There's like the weirdest subreddits out there for like people that love like stamps from like 1940 to 1947.
Oh,
Whatever
and
it
the
is.
weirdest like TikToks. Like I guarantee my
Right.
TikTok is super different than your TikTok,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, yes, yes, for sure. But so I do think like creators will be able to build things that are particularly suited for their audiences. But the second part too is, as we've seen in beauty and in fashion and in other trends, like some creators are really successful and others aren't. Actually, a good
Yep.
example of this is in gaming. Like Kim Kardashian's mobile game, this is from like 8 years ago or something,
Yeah.
was super successful. And like 30 other big celebrities are like, I want a game too. And none of them worked. And the reason is none of
Yep.
those celebrities cared. Like they didn't actually, they just wanted the dollars that they saw to come from it, but they didn't
Yep.
actually care about the experience for their audience and their community. And not all creators are the same. Like we were talking about earlier, like, you know, if you have a community that really watches you for your opinion, like you're going to do really well here. But if like,
Hmm.
you know, you're really funny and entertaining and you had a really viral like meme, like that's not going to be as close of a tie to your audience that you're going to need to build a product around you. And that's why
Absolutely.
like some of these creator groups that are starting, you know, I think OTK is doing an amazing job with Mad Mushroom, Off Brand, which is Ludwig and team, and then there's an agency, Loaded, which is a bunch of the big Twitch streamers. Like they're starting to do a bunch of
Yep.
this. I think like they're going to be really successful. And then you're right, like everyone will start to be involved, and a lot of it won't work because the creators just see the dollars, but they are not actually trying to make a great product for their community.
Totally. And what do you think is like a very overhyped trend or technology in gaming and influencer markets that it's overvalued?
Okay. Caring about the rank of your game on Twitch. So like this has bothered me.
Yes.
It's been like a decade of agencies will, like, some marketing person for some agency, their objective is, can we be in the top 5 games of Twitch? And like that is so irrelevant from the success of the game, because all you need to do that is like pay 2 of the top 5 streamers, because Twitch is a power law. Just pay 2 of the people that have
Yep.
20,000 concurrent viewers to play the game for 5 minutes, and you will be able to take your screenshot and bring it to your boss, who will bring it to the publisher, who will bring it to their boss, and be like, look how great we did. When like none of that is relevant to the actual metrics of the success of your game or the
Yep.
launch. And so like that specific thing, like anyone who touts, hey, we were, you know, the 7th most watched game on Twitch, it's like, okay, but it was probably like one person was playing your game for 3 minutes.
Right. Exactly. Like that is not the target you should be trying to hit. Like we lost the plot if that's your KPI that you're bringing to your boss.
Yeah. So I guess that like maybe is you know, pet peeve, I guess, that I have. I guess that would be like the first thing that comes to mind of things that are hyped that I wish weren't hyped.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. And do you think that, because I kind of go back and forth on this one, do you feel like the market currently overvalues or undervalues influencer partnerships?
Undervalues, certainly.
Undervalues.
I think if people like, if there was clear attribution, if you as a game publisher knew exactly how many players started playing your game and bought stuff in your game, if like you could see the exact attribution of the dollars that came from creators, the world would be so different. Like every single game would
Yeah.
have a creator program. There's some like great examples of where it is clear and obvious, but I think like it is significantly undervalued on the whole. There are places where it's overvalued. I think some of the dollars for influencer marketing is unnecessary when you're thinking about it from a brand or an awareness perspective. And
Yeah.
again, you're just paying like the biggest creators the most money. If you're paying like $300,000 to get 3 people to stream the game for like 4 hours, it's not about the number of viewers, whether it's Twitch or YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is. It's about like how many of those viewers, if they knew about your game, would fall in love with it. And so like it's really about the aligned discovery of aligning the right creators to the right game. And I think people are getting better at this, of like really trying to focus on this, but
Yeah.
there isn't as much. I think a lot of times games are like, let's try to, like, we know we're gonna, like, someone's launching a new action RPG and they're like, we're gonna get all the action RPG creators to play our game. Let's go pay these people and get other audiences. It's like, that's not I wouldn't recommend that. Like, you can experiment with that if you'd like, but that should not be the main strategy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, it's something that I like we definitely practice here too to try to avoid that. It's easy to fall into the trap though.
It's
I can see
super.
why people do it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the way that it works is an agency only has so many creators, and so like someone, the meta agency or the publisher will be like, hey, we want, they might know what sort of creators or specifically what names they want, and the agency's like, well, we don't have that. Or they'll even say, hey, we have this big name, but then it turns out that person's busy or doesn't want to do it, so we're going to give you like these other 3 people. They're not
Yep.
interchangeable. Like the creators'
Yeah, that
audience
is not the same.
yes,
They're people.
there's some
Yes.
exactly. There's some Venn diagram of a viewer that like is duplicated across audiences, but that deduplication is also really important, of like making sure that you are actually targeting the audience that could fall in love with your game.
Absolutely. I have a few more questions for you. So the first one is, what advice would you give to any individual aspiring to become a content creator today?
Okay, I have the annoying pithy advice and then some tactical advice. So the annoying pithy advice is it's really hard and you're probably not going to be successful, and don't do it unless you have to. Like, this is not you. It's so unlikely that you can just be like start making content and then become a professional content creator. Like, that path is there's so much luck involved and so many things that aren't
100%.
in your control that you can't do. That like, if that is your goal of like, hey, I see the biggest content creators make all that money, I want to make all that money, I'll be a content creator. That logic doesn't logic very well.
Yeah.
But on the tactical advice, I do have some pieces, which is one, try to be as niche as you can. So focus on like finding your set of, it can be a small group at first of people that like really, really, really love you because your content is so unique that they can't get it anywhere else.
Yep.
And probably like figure out where you lean, like either be the best at the game. So be, top 0.001% of the world, top 20 people of the world. And I'm talking about gaming content creators, which is really the only thing I know.
Yep.
Which is going to be hard. Like, you'll know if you're that. You can't, it's very hard to like become that. You're either already the best in the world or you're probably never going to be the best in the world at the game. If it's not that, if it's because of entertainment, that's a really hard road to follow. Like, to stand out because you're particularly entertaining or interesting. I think a good example of this recently is Sketch, who's like been blowing up and going crazy. Him and Jinxie from Rainbow Six Siege have like been going wild. And like, Sketch is like a unique 0.01% talent of entertainment, and it's really hard to like do that unless it's clear that you're already there. But one of the places that is more likely is on like the education side. So like, becoming the most informed recommender of like indie roguelike deck building games like Balatro and Slay the Spire. Like, you can like just narrow in on that and like become really informed and then build an audience around that. So that's a little bit tactical. The best thing you could ever do to grow an audience and be a content creator is collaborations. Gaming is very allergic to any sort of paid activity, anything. And part of that is the the Twitch ecosystem is in real time. People can call you a shill, and so you like don't want that, and
Yeah.
so you try to avoid things that look like you're making any money. But if you can do collaborations, they're probably going to have to be at least pseudo organic, where like you build friendships and network with people and then collaborate. That is the best thing you can do to grow an audience, is like collaborate with people that have an audience that's similar to you. A lot is the same advice for launching a game, by the way, is like find the creators that have an audience that will like your game.
Yep.
But so like again, if you're going to do that like roguelike indie deck building thing, do collaborations with Jorbs, who's like the most well-known Slay the Spire content creator. Like find a way to be in the circle of Northern Lion and be part of some of the folks that he plays with. Like those are the things that I would recommend.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. It's good tactical advice, I think.
It's still really hard, and like if you're just gonna do it to make money, don't like it is unlikely to work out. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's very much the same with like a startup. You know what I mean? It's like, are you solving a problem, or are you hoping that or are you starting from the place of like, I'm going to make a lot of money. How do I do that?
It's actually the same advice I give
Same
people
logic.
starting a company. It's like, don't do this unless you can't not do it. Unless like
Right.
everything in your body is saying you have to. Like it is so hard and will make you so sad and probably won't work out. Like, please don't do this. Unless you hear me say those things and you're like, too bad. Like, listen.
Then this is for you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I have one last question for you, which is, what advice would you give to a publisher, community manager, or gaming marketer hoping to succeed with influencer strategies?
We've talked a bunch about it, where it's trying to identify the players that will love your game. Who are the people that they watch? And those are the creators you want to work with. And that sounds so obvious, but people don't do that. They just, look at the big people,
Yep.
and like who's most available and who's easiest to reach. But like really try to find like where do those audiences and those players live, and then like reach out to them through those creators. And then of course, from a very biased perspective, like have a creator program. If you're the sort of game that can work with creators in the long term, you should build a creator program. Like it's worth the effort you're going to put in. Happy to come to Nexus and see if we can help you, and I'm happy to see if we can. But like building that evergreen relationship with creators can be really impactful. Like having a way that those content creators again can make a living where their job is to make content for your game, like that is so valuable. And like when you can make that happen, it is going to be just really, really great, certainly for you, but also for the creator and just generally for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm happy to help. I think some of the things that I'd recommend are the things not to do. So like, don't build a game esports first. Don't build a game like, influencer first. Like you have to make a game that is fun, that people want to play, that people want to keep playing. And then you can layer on those systems afterwards.
And that's our show. Thanks for tuning into Influence. It was so wonderful having Justin with us here today, sharing a lot about creator programs, what they are, how they work, how can we improve them, and what it means for a company that's really tiny to have one versus a really large publisher with unlimited resources. Remember that with every episode of Influence, we bring you the minds and voices leading the charge in the influencer marketing world, helping you stay ahead in this rapidly changing landscape. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at PowderGG and at PowderVideo on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for more updates and behind-the-scenes content.